morning! Welcome to games. The first game from this set, a lovely, delicious, totally edible standard ordering game. We are putting these 6 things into order. We've got the standard rules that we expect for standard ordering. This one's before that one, that one's before the other. To wit, V is before Z. Z and W are both before X. And while Y is in the first 3, U has to be in the last 3. Let's dive right in. We'll start with the directive questions. How about question 2? If zircon is earlier than yard sign, what's the earliest for wellspring? Well, let's put Z earlier than Y. Okay, so now we have V before Z before Y, and of course that's before X. And W also before X. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The only thing we don't know about is U, which is in the last 3 somewhere. V is before Z is before Y. Y has to be in the first 3, so it's V before Z before Y. And then W is before X and U is in there somewhere. So I'll say U with W before X. Now, remember that slash to me means that U could drop in any place in there. All right, we were asked the earliest slot for wellspring, and at the very earliest, wellspring could be 4th. Look at answer choice C. All right, next directive question. How about 3? If Vegemite's in slot 3, what has to be true? Well, let's see. That was question 2. If we put Vegemite in slot 3, then we know that Y has to be before it, and what else could be before it? Not U. U is at the end. Not Z or X. They both have to be after it. So before Vegemite, it's going to have to be Y and W in some order. W might be first, it might be Y. And then after Z is before X, and U will slot somewhere in between them or after them, before them. I don't know. But I don't care about any of that. I was asked for what must be true, and nothing must be true about uneasy. A, uneasy is earlier than, it could be earlier, it could be later. B, wellspring is earlier than Z. Yes, no matter whether wellspring is second or first, it's going to be earlier than Z, which is after V somewhere. That's question 3. Question 4, if zircon is immediately before wellspring, what must be true? Let's check it out. Zircon is now immediately before wellspring, and we had a rule, that is that Z and W both had to be before X, Z has to be after V, and U has to be in the last 3, Y has to be in the first 3. So where is this Z and W going to go? Well, they have to have at least 2 things after them, X and U, and they have to have at least 2 things before them, V and Y. So that means Z and W have to be right here. And then you've got V and Y in some order, and U and X in some order. And again, I don't really care because I was asked what must be true. A, uneasy, I don't know. B, Vegemite, I don't know. I mean, it's 1 or 2. C, expert, I don't know. D, yard sign, I don't know. I mean, I don't know about any of these. They're like in one or the other of those places. But oh, look at E! Zircon is in slot 3, and yes. Yes, it is. All right, our last directive question is question 6. If wellspring is immediately before expert, what could be true? Let's do it. Wellspring is immediately before expert, then you know that they've got Z and V before them, and we can talk about where that goes. Clearly not in the first part of the diagram, so the only question is whether U in those last 3 is before them or after them. And it could go both ways. You could have U and then W and X, or you could have U with W and X before it. Either way, you've got V before Z and Y in there somewhere. Where? I don't know. Let's take a look at those answer choices. What could be true? Uneasy is in slot 5. No, uneasy is in 4 or else 6. Vegemite is in slot 3. No, because Vegemite has to be before Z, and you can't put it before Z if it's in 3rd. Wellspring is in slot 3. No, Wellspring is in 4 or else 5. Zircon is in slot 2. Oh, yeah, V, Z, Y. Sure, that could be true. And that leaves us with our non-directive blanket questions, questions number 1 and 5. So let's take 1 first. Which of the following cannot be the band that performs in slot 5? The band that can't be in slot 5, well, we know that U can be in slot 5, W can be in slot 5, X can be in slot 5, Z, so I've got U, W, X, and Z. Answer choice A, C, D, and E. Leaving us with only answer choice B, Vegemite cannot be in slot 5. And also, that's just ridiculous because Vegemite has to have at least 2 things after it. You can't put it that far back. Finally, among our blanket questions, question 5, a complete and accurate list of bands, any one of which could be the band that performs in slot 1. And for this question, just as in question 1, notice how we're going to be able to use our prior work to answer the question. Any of those bands that could be in slot 1. Well, we have already seen that slot 1 could be V. It could be Y, or it could be W. Or it could be Y. Can't be Z. Z has to be after V. So it has to be, our list has to be V, W, Y, and then maybe something we haven't gotten to. But any list that doesn't contain all 3 of those, we'll get rid of. Answer choice A, yard sign doesn't have V and W. B, it doesn't have yard sign. C, it doesn't have W. D, looks just right. E contains zircon, which actually we already established. Zircon can't be first, it's got something before it. And this is why I do the things in the order that I do them in. Alright, that leaves us with only the substitution question. Let's attack it. Remember our 2-pronged plan of attack for substitution questions. If it's going to be a substitute, it must A, be true every single time the old rule that we're substituting for was true. Which means, since whatever rule we're substituting for was true here and here and here and here and here, that means that our new rule must also be true here and here and here and here and here. If it isn't, it's just not a substitute. We'll start there. Get rid of things that aren't an adequate substitute. A, only uneasy can be later than expert. Well, so far, that has been true. We've had uneasy later than expert, right? Every single time. So far it passes that first test. Let's keep moving. B, Vegemite is earlier than W, which is earlier than Z. V before W before Z. But here, that's not true. That's not true in every instance. So we can get rid of that because that's not, and notice, by the way, I didn't even look at what rule we're substituting for because it doesn't matter at this stage. No matter what rule we're substituting for, that rule was always true, so this new rule must always be true. And in answer choice B, that rule isn't true in every instance. Get rid of answer choice B, it's not a substitute. C, V and W are earlier than X. V and W are earlier than X. V and W is before X. V and W is before X. That's true in every instance so far. That may be our answer. Let's hold on to that. We'll keep moving. D, X is immediately before or immediately after U. X has to be right next to U. But here's an instance where that isn't true. That is not an adequate substitute for any of our prior rules. Get rid of answer choice D. And that leaves us with E. X is either slot 5 or slot 6. X is in 5 or 6. Here, X would be in 5 or 6 after W. Here, X is in 5 or 6 after Z. Here, X is in 5 or 6, 5 or 6. Okay, so far every time that has been true. Alright, so after our first pass, we got rid of answer choices B and D, and now we need our second prong of attack. And now it does matter what rule we're substituting for. Part A was that it had to be true every time the old rule is true. Part B, it has to be false every time the old rule is false. So here's how we test that. We're going to make the old rule false while we make the new rule true. Let's try it out. I'm going to leave answer choice A till last. So let's take a look at answer choice C. V and W are each earlier than X. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to make that true while making our old rule, the one we're substituting for, the rule that W and Z are before X. I want to make that rule false. Because if I can make answer choice C true while our old rule is false, then C is not the same as our old rule. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, right? All right, C, V and W are each earlier than X. Well, let's put V and W earlier than X. I'll just put them right here. I need Y. Now I needed V to be before Z, but that's accomplished. V and W are before X, and there's Z, and there's U. All right, now answer choice C is true. V and W are before X. But our old rule that Z and W are before X is now false. Z is after X. And that means that answer choice C is not the same as our old rule. It's not a substitute. Get rid of it. Answer choice E, X is either slot 5 or slot 6. Let's do it. X is slot 5 or slot 6. Let's put X in slot 5. I can put a U in there somewhere. I'll put a W right here. I've got a Y and a V and a Z, and you see it happening again, right? The new rule is true. X is in slot 5. But the old rule, that both W and Z had to be before X, that rule is false. So if I can make answer choice E true while making our old rule false, then E is not the same as our old rule. And that, of course, leaves us with answer choice A. And look what happens when we try to make answer choice A true and yet make this old rule false. Only U can perform later than X. So that means there's only one thing later than X. X is either fifth or X is last. Now, obviously, if X is last, this old rule is going to be true. Both Z and W will be before X. But if X is fifth, if U is the only thing that can be after it, once again, this old rule must be true. If we put U there, Z and W have to be before X. Answer choice A was true every single time the old rule was true. Answer choice A is gonna have to be false if we try to make that rule false. There's no way to have them both, to not have them both the same. And that's what it means to have a substitute. You can't make A true and make this old rule false, or vice versa. And that then dispenses with this game.